there. Thanks very much for coming along to this webinar. My name's Westley Holdsworth. I'm a Grants and Programs Manager at PRS Foundation. So today we are going to go through a little presentation about ISF and what our assessors are looking for in applications. We'll go through the assessment process and then I'll walk through the actual application form. This shouldn't take too long, but this is a pre-recorded webinar and I will be in the chat on YouTube. So any questions you have while the webinar is being played, you can just ask on YouTube and I can answer straight away there. So because there's a lot of applications, it's a good way of us answering lots of questions that should be relevant to everybody really. So yeah, thanks again for coming along. First of all, so the International Showcase Fund is not just for South by Southwest, it's for any international showcase event. So anything that is like a business to business showcase festival where you're playing to a delegate crowd of industry representatives rather than to the public. So things like Talent Music Week, Jazz Ahead, Bailam, New School Rules, all that sort of stuff. Anything like that, this is not an exhaustive list. There are loads of them all over the world. So anytime you're invited to anything like that, you should be getting in touch with us to see whether you can or can't apply to that. Most of the ones that we work with will be contacting you directly like South by Southwest do to advise you of the opportunity. But as I say, there are lots of these all around the world and whichever one is most relevant to you is fine for us as long as it fits with the criteria. You can also apply for writing camps through the International Showcase Fund as well. So if that's something you're interested in, you should be looking at that too. The International Showcase Fund is managed by PRS Foundation, but it is supported by and funded by lots of different organisations. So Arts Council England, PPL, the Musicians Union, British Underground, and all of the devolved nations arts councils as well. So Credit Scotland, Wales Arts International, sorry, Arts Council Northern Ireland. So it's worth remembering if you're applying from Northern Ireland, Wales or Scotland, there is money specifically for you based in this fund, and then as well as the overall pot that everyone can access as well. So since you've been invited to South by Southwest, that's why you've been invited to this webinar. South by Southwest is one of our most, or the most in-demand showcase event for obvious reasons. Everybody wants to go and it's a very big, well-known event. That does mean that the demand is higher than the amount of money we have to spend. The success rate is usually about 45% for applications applying to South by Southwest. So you really do need to make sure you put across the strongest application possible, which is what we'll go through when we go through the application form. So yeah, if you've been invited to an international event with a conference element that's geared towards music industry professionals rather than the public, you can apply to us. Or if you've been invited to a songwriting camp, which is geared towards international collaboration and creative and career progression, you can apply to us. In order to be eligible, you need to show that you have got a good profile in the UK already. So you've got a good foundation to launch from. So you've been featured in national press, had airplay on national radio and indie releases, that sort of thing. That is obviously relevant to different showcases and different genres and different areas of the UK. We wouldn't expect the same level of UK profile of, say, a metal band taking their first steps into Europe as we would for a band who's been played on BBC Radio 6 a lot trying to get to South by Southwest, because they're very different things. And in many ways, in some genres, international exposure comes first, and metal being one of those is a good example of that, I find. So it's all relevant to who you are and where you are. And that's kind of the strength of our assessment process, is that it's always going to be seen by someone who knows a bit about where you are and what you do. So we'll talk a bit more about that later on as well. You need to show that you have a list of meetings of industry executives, so publishers, labels, agents, whatever it is you're going to the showcase for. And you need to show that they're confirmed when you're applying to us. Ideally, that would be the strongest application. You need to have a strong business case for attending the specific event, building on any prior success there, following up on any opportunities you may have. You've just got to show your reasoning for wanting to go, really, and why the timing is right and how it's going to help you. And obviously you need to know that you're in need of funding support and not in a situation where any other companies you're working for should be able to cover the costs of your participation in that showcase. So when you apply to us, depending again on whether you're applying for a writing event or a songwriting camp or an in real life event, is slightly different. But in this case, we're applying for an in real life event at South by Southwest. It's up to £1,500 for an individual performer. 2,500 for two, 3,500 for three of you, 4,500 for four of you. And 4,500 is the maximum. Even if there's 10 of you, you can only get 4,500 from us. And that has to be only for performing members of the band or artist or collective, whoever is performing. So things like tour managers and that is not included in that amount. And then on top of that, there is an extra £1,000 for your management, which is so that they can come along with you. And it's really, really important to have that support on the ground, I think, especially for something like South by Southwest, which is a huge, huge event. To be able to have your artists concentrating on doing the best performances they possibly can, and the management going around doing all the networking, speaking to the people they need to speak to, that's really the best way to get the most out of South by Southwest. So yeah, the extra money for the management is really, really important, I think. And it's slightly different for the other ones, but this information is on our website. So if you're interested in applying for the International Showcase Fund for any other international showcases, look at that on our website before you apply to make sure you're asking for the correct amount of money. Again, this is also on our website. This really details what you can and can't apply for. The real point of the International Showcase Fund is travel costs, accommodation costs, visa costs. That's the primary things we're looking to fund, all of just the artists and the managers that are trying to get there. There are some other things that you can put in. Obviously, per diems are important. You need to feed yourself. Marketing and promotion, we do want to see in our application form what you're going to do to promote yourself when you're out there. So you can also include some of those costs as well. And then you can start to see some of the differences between, if you're going to a songwriting camp, you can apply for equipment, plug-in purchases, that kind of thing. You can't do that for a live event because we're really just trying to get you there. So do look at that. And again, it's really important to make sure you have checked that, because if you've asked for something we can't fund, generally what will happen is that however much you have asked for is going to be taken off the budget. So you want to make sure that your budget is correct and includes only things we can fund. Otherwise, you run the risk of getting a lot less than you asked for. You may also find you will get offered a less amount, and that unfortunately is just down to demand and budgets. We try not to do that where possible, because people are applying for us because they need the money to get there. We understand that. But where we have situations where the panel want to support a certain amount of artists, then we might shave some money off some budgets if there are these areas that are a bit grey. So do check that, make sure you're asking for the correct things. And again, that's on our website. So in your application, you really need to make a clear case that you're export ready. So you do that by telling us about your career success to date, why the showcase is important to you, and how it's going to help you build on your career internationally. And if you can, elaborate on what you're going to do afterwards. Obviously, if you go to South by Southwest and you get a new booking agent or a publisher or something and you want to go back, how are you going to go back? So having a bit of a long-term plan also makes a much stronger application. Knowing who you intend to meet with the specific names of those people are much better than just naming some companies you would like to meet with, or even saying, I want to meet a record label. It's really good to have actual names, because lots of people do know exactly they're going for specific opportunities. So in order to have the strongest application, you need to be speaking about the very specifics of why you're going. And as I mentioned earlier, how you're going to promote yourself while you're there is really important. There are thousands of bands playing at South by Southwest. What you're going to do to help get your head above the water, make sure people know you're there. Also good to stipulate any pre-existing relationships you have in the country. So say you already have a US label, do name them in their application. That's not going to be held against you. That's good. That shows that you already have strong demand and presence in that space, and you're going to capitalize on that. So again, names and specifics is what we need for that. And you'll need to have some concrete plans of what outcomes you expect from the showcase. We do ask for these in the application form, which I'll go through again. And it's really good to be very clear and specific again with these, because if you are successful in the grant, you get 80% up front, and then you get the 20% when you give us an evaluation afterwards. And we want to know, how did those outcomes that you said you wanted to get go? So yeah, you need to be very clear about that as well. And it's just good to note that we're not really looking for essays or academic applications. You can be very concise. You can even bullet point your answers, just as clear as you can be, really. And you don't need to go into massive detail. We just want the facts. And I always think it's good to approach this as more of a business plan of how this is going to happen, rather than pitching an idea of how, oh, if I get to go, I'd like to do this. Just tell us exactly what's going to happen and how you're going to do it. And yeah, don't worry about kind of things you might put in a press release. Don't try and oversell yourself or come in with lots of woolly, vague stuff about how great you are. Just be very specific about why you're going to this showcase, what you're going to do, what you're going to get out of it, and why the timing is right. So when you're ready to apply, you can sign up for an account on our grants portal, FlexiGrant. Then you'll be able to see the International Showcase Fund. I think it's the only fund open right now. And there's also a Welsh version in Welsh language if you're Welsh. And you need to usually, and this applies to any showcase, apply 8 weeks before the showcase starts. In this case, we have a deadline specifically for South by, which is January the 6th. And then the panel is on January the 16th. So you will hear back if you are successful or not a couple of days after January 16th. It's good not to book anything before our decision. We can't fund things retrospectively. And you'll also, as I mentioned earlier, do research the budget, make sure you're applying for the right stuff. Make sure you have a very clear plan of what you want to achieve and how it's going to help advance your international career, which is very, very important. Cool. So as you're going to, I assume, doing lots of applications over the Christmas period, our office is closed between Christmas Eve and January 2nd, I believe. Any questions you have about anything, please just email applications@prsfoundation.com and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. As soon as I get back into the office after Christmas, that's going to be my main thing, is just following up on any questions people have in time for them to submit their applications. So if you do have any problems, please do email us there and we will get back to you before the deadline. And that's really it for just the basic overview of ISF. So now I think if we have a look at the actual application form, we can start going through the questions. Cool. So when you log into FlexiGrant, which is our grants management website, you'll find that on the main page of the International Showcase Fund guidance on our website. Or if you go on prsfoundation.com, it's in the top right-hand corner. You just click log on and then it will take you to this website, make an account, and then you can start your application. Your PRS for Music credentials won't work on this because we are two separate organizations. So you need to create a new account with us. And then once you've done that, as I mentioned, these are the only two funds that are available. International Showcase Fund. Click here to start your application. I've already started one, so we can resume this. And you can save it and come back to it as many times as you want. You don't have to do it all in one go. So this first part here, it says, please read the funding criteria and the applicant FAQs before you apply. I can't stress how important that is. I know that the website is a bit of a mess and there's a lot of information to take in, but it's really important that you do that, because if you put stuff in your application which is ineligible or you approach it in the wrong way, you're not going to get the grant. So it's really, really important to understand all of those things that we can and can't support. Next year, this will be much clearer. I think we're changing the layout of the website. That doesn't help you now, unfortunately, but it will be clearer in the future. But as I say, any questions when you're doing the form, if something doesn't make sense, do email us and we'll get back to you as soon as we can when we get back. And I am also here until the 23rd, Friday, 23rd, 6 p.m. So do email applications before then as well. All the questions marked with a red star must be completed. Once you've completed all the sections, the submit button will become available at the bottom of this page that we're on, this main page here, and also at the top of the last page. So if you do the last section last, then the submit button will appear and you have to click that submit and then your application is done. Once that's done, you can still look at it, but you won't be able to change it. So do double check everything before you submit. You won't be able to open it again and resubmit. Once it's submitted, it's done. So the first section here is eligibility. It's worth talking about that. So these questions, if you click the wrong answer, so it says again, have you read the guidance and FAQs? No, it says you can't go forward. I do find sometimes, and some of these quizzes are a bit longer on different grant schemes that we run, it looks as if people just find the correct answer and don't actually read the question, because then you go on to do exactly what you said you wouldn't do in the application form. So do read them properly, make sure you've understood them. Registered address in the UK, yes. Have you received an official invite to showcase at the international event? You have to have your invite already in order to apply to the scheme. If you don't have that, you can't apply. And so if you only have your if you're just a delegate, you can't apply. You need to be a performing artist. Obviously, if you're a manager applying on behalf of a performing artist, that's fine, but you need to include that that invite in your application form, and that's the same for any showcase. So once you've done that, you can save your progress, and then you can move on to the next section. So now we're in section 2. Just need to provide the name, obviously, of the music creator that's going. You can also list the individual names if you want to, and then provide your manager's name. I think even if your manager isn't going with you, it's good to name them anyway, to show you have a team, you have people working with you who support you as well. Name of the showcase, self-explanatory. And then this one here, if you're signed to a record label, to a major record label or publisher, you need to specify this. So if you're signed to a major label in the US, then you are ineligible for support through the International Showcase Fund. If you are signed to a major label just based in the UK, you may be able to apply. I would suggest still getting in touch with us to make sure, so we can check what the parameters of that deal is. There are a lot of grey areas, particularly with subsidiaries and labels that might not look like they're majors, but they actually are. So I would get in touch with us just to make sure that you are eligible before going any further, because if you spend all the time doing this application form, it turns out actually you can't apply, you would have wasted your time, and we don't want you to do that. Essentially, that's because major labels have a lot more money than we do. But yeah, it's a difficult one because there are lots of grey areas. So I would get in touch if that is you, and yeah, contact info@prsfoundation.com and we'll sort that out for you. The next section is slightly annoying, and it's just a quirk of the system that this part asking you budget questions is before the actual budget. So I would suggest maybe leaving this part and coming back to it when you've done the actual budget. Sometimes the numbers here don't match the numbers in the budget, and then that leads the assessors to question how much are you actually asking for. So I would do it that way, but essentially what you have to do is the amount you're asking for your artist, band, music creator, I would assume you're asking for as much as you need per person. And then your manager request, how much you're asking for the manager. And then how much that equals, so those two things added together. And then how much your whole project costs. So yeah, it makes sense that you would only really know that once you've done your budget. And it's worth noting as well that the International Showcase Fund can only support 90% of your total project budget. So you need to be putting in some of your own money. We would also expect if you have big labels or decent management companies, anything like that, that they would probably be putting some money in as well. If you are unable to put any money in, I would probably say that it seems like it's a bit early for you to be going to South by Southwest. There are lots of other smaller showcases you could probably be going to first while you build your profile until you get to that point where you have a bit more of a foundation to launch from. That's kind of part of being export ready, I would say, because if you go to South by, get a great opportunity, how are you going to get back there to capitalize on that? So just being able to put in a little bit of money shows that you are approaching that export ready level. And it's more so for South by Southwest, I think, than many other showcases, just because it's such a massive event. It's very easy to get lost, and you really need to have a solid reason for going. How many performing members are traveling as part of the activity? So that's just band members. You don't have to include the manager in that. And then you need to tell us which region you're from, whereabouts in the UK you're based. And then tell us where you are originally from. This is really a question that is more for our monitoring, and we kind of use this to build a picture of music creators' movements over time. It's not something that will be used to discriminate against anyone, particularly if you're an international artist. So generally this doesn't get spoken about at panels. It's more for us than anything else. And then gender. And the same for which music creator roles apply to you. We're really quite interested in the different types of music creators that are applying to us. Obviously, get more bands than producers, but we can support producers, so we like to know what that's all looking like. Please provide a link to your website. If you don't have an actual website, you can just link it to your most used social media, say. And then down here, we just want a list of your social media sites and all the things that you use to promote yourself online. Best to use individual links rather than if you have like a link tree page or something, please do put in each individual link for us. And then please state your music creators' earnings in the last 12 months. Again, I think this is one where people maybe think that this is going to be used to judge whether they should or shouldn't go. It's more, again, it's more for us than anything else. We'll be asked a similar question at the end in the evaluation. If you are successful, then we can kind of see again over time how much has this impacted your income. And then what percentage of your annual income is from overseas live or streaming revenue. Just a good way of showing that you have demand overseas. Okay, same again. And then the name of the main music creator. So say you are a manager who is applying on behalf of an artist, or a record label applying on behalf of an artist. And this again applies to all of our grants. The grant that is given is for the artist. So we ask this so we have a contact for that person in the event of any kind of relationship breakdown. The money is always for the artist. So we just need to be able to speak to both parties if that situation does arise, which unfortunately it does occasionally. And then again, asking, are you members of PRS, Musicians Union, PPL, or people who put money into the International Showcase Fund? So they just want to know who is and isn't. I would suggest if you're looking to build an international career, you probably should be a PRS and PPL member. And the Musicians Union have lots of really great information about visas and help with lawyers and all that sort of stuff. They're a really great organization to be involved with. And then, have you applied before? All these things are more for us than the assessment process at this point. Have you previously received PRS Foundation funding? One thing to note is when you have had our PPL Momentum Fund, you can't go back to funds like the Open Fund because they're pitched at a lower level, so you can't really have many other grants from us. ISF is not included in that. You can still come in for ISF even if you've had a PPL Momentum grant. So again, that's something I think stumps a few people and makes them a bit worried, but don't worry about that. How did you hear about us? Newsletter, and if you would like your details passed on to relevant organizations, the usual stuff. So once you've done that, you can go over to the Your Music section. So here is where you really get to show us your music, which will essentially form 50% of the score that your application receives from our assessors. When it comes to the assessment process, your application for South by Southwest will be assessed by, if you're from a nation, there'll be an extra person. If not, so about between 7 and 8 people, individuals, and then we'll use the average score of those to build a long list of the strongest applications. It's really important when you do this that you link directly to a song, not to an album or a discography or a playlist, but directly to one specific song that you want people to listen to. So you need to choose a genre. This is going to be changed next year because it's not a particularly exhaustive list of genres, and you probably find that yours doesn't fit on there. Just choose the closest one possible at this point, unfortunately. Yeah, you get 2 music examples. Obviously, they can be different, but do make sure it's a link to a publicly available stream of an individual track. And if you want to include something you haven't released, and that's kind of good if, say, you're going to South by because you want to secure a record label for your next album, and that's done, you can include a track from your next album to show what that's like, but you don't want to release that yet because it's private. You can just include a password to like a SoundCloud or wherever that might be. That's fine, but do make sure it's the correct password and that it works. Sometimes it doesn't. And then this is really important that you submit a link to a live performance video. And I would advise against a music video, like an actual live performance video if you have it, because obviously you're going to perform a live showcase performance. People would like to see an example of you performing live. If you don't have that, then use a music video, or even just chuck in another music example if you want to. But ideally, it would be a live music performance video. It's really, really helpful to see that. I think it makes a big difference in the assessment process. And then please provide recent web links to reviews or a reference from someone who wants to see you. If there's someone out there who you're specifically looking to meet, then they can write a little reference for you. That's really good. Or anyone that you've worked with previously, like a producer you might have worked with in the UK, anything like that is fine. And just something to show the kind of level that you're at and who you're trying to reach or what you've done. It's another way of showing the demand for you as an artist. And then tell us about the highlights of your career so far. Give details of your profile in the UK, include recent touring, festivals, recordings, airplay, and media. So this little bullet pointer thing, these aren't all, you don't have to answer everyone. Just whatever is relevant to you is fine. And some things might not be in here that you want to throw in. Anything that really shows, your career highlights. And again, you can bullet point the answers and just say, we've done X, Y, and Z throughout the last year or two. And yeah, this is what we use to build that picture of where you are as an artist in your career. And we move on to the next section, which is about your showcase. So telling us about the demand outside of the UK. So yeah, any kind of interactions you've already had with the territory you're trying to go to is really, really helpful. Specifically, any industry interest that you've had, that's really great. You can also include radio play if you've had any reviews, blogs, whatever. Your streaming numbers might be big in a particular region. All of that stuff is fine. It's just a way of showing that there is demand already, and you're going to capitalize on that, and just having a bit of detail about how you're going to do that. And then who is in your team. So this is your current team, not including, you don't have to list band members, just like management, agents, lawyers, that sort of stuff. Again, just shows what level you're at already here in the UK. And if you're already working with international people, this is a good place to put them in as well. And then here you need to upload your official invite. So this section, the form sort of changes slightly depending on what it is you're applying for. There is no songwriting camp at South by this year. There was a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago now, lost track of time. So you'll be choosing artist, band. And then what type of showcase event are you going to? This is an in real life one. In real life international showcase. We did offer, or there still is, digital contingency for virtual performances at showcases, but that was really for the lockdown period where people couldn't travel. I would not advise really putting that in your budget at this point if you're planning to go to South by Southwest, because it's very unlikely that it's going to be cancelled, and it's not so much of a priority as it was, last year. So again, that will be removed going forward as we go into next year. So this is asking more about your travel insurance. Have you looked at South by's safety policies, all that sort of stuff? Are you comfortable with UK government's travel situation? It's still based on COVID, which all seems fine at this point. But it's good to still check that and show that you have here. And then here you need to explain your reason for attending the showcase and include your 3 measurable outcomes that you expect. This is really, really important. And it's one of the main questions I find in the application form where applications fall down. So be really, really specific with these. We asked for 3. If you want to do 5, you can do 5. That's good. But 1 or 2 isn't really enough. So you just need to be very clear about, say, one of my measurable outcomes might be, we've had interest from record label X, so we're going to go and meet with them to talk about doing X. Like, just be specific about what you expect to happen. Obviously, things don't always happen, and that's fine. We don't expect everything you want to happen at South by to just magically happen, but it's good to show that you have a very solid vision and a plan of how you're going to attack this showcase and how you're going to get the most out of it, and that you're not just going to see what happens. Essentially, you're going for reasons. What are those reasons? And just be very, very specific about it. Talk a little bit about how you hope you're going to achieve them. And yeah. And then you need to provide details of unconfirmed or confirmed performances. So any showcases that you've already had confirmed, and then any that you are looking at confirming, maybe if you've already reached out and spoken to the people about some other showcases. Also important to note here about visas. We have another webinar, which I'll link you in the chat, which we did a little while ago with Tamisdat, Matthew Covey, who's a visa lawyer. And if you are playing just the official South by Southwest showcase, you can go on an ESTA. If you are playing unofficial South by Southwest showcases, you probably need a proper work visa. And then if you are touring around South by Southwest, you definitely need a proper work visa. So depending on exactly what you're doing, you will need a different visa. So if you're putting answers in here, you need to make sure that the visa you're asking for in your budget is the correct one. And as I said, I'll link to that other webinar, which if you're not sure, you should look at that as well. And then here you can give details of your PR and marketing plan in the lead up to the event. That can be either if you have a UK PR team and they're going to help push, that's fine. Or if you're paying extra for a US publicist to do something for you, you can just put that all in there and try and get some detail about what exactly are they going to do for you, where are you going to appear, what places are they pitching you to. Just have much, again, it's about having much more of a plan than just seeing what happens. And then this 5 key contacts question, again, I think is one of the main questions where applications fall down. The point of the International Showcase Fund is to help people build an international career, an international team. Going to South by Southwest is actually also a really great way of meeting lots of UK-based industry, because they'll all be there. But for the International Showcase Fund, the key is really the international business you're looking to meet with. So if all 5 of these key contacts are based in London, then the panel will just say, this person doesn't need to go to Austin, Texas to meet with these people. That's not a priority. So it is, I would say, for the strongest applications, all of these people should be international contacts that you're looking to meet with. If there is someone in the UK that you know is there that you're going to meet with that's strategically important to your plans of what you want to do there, then that's fine. I just think that it's better to stick with the majority being international for the strongest application based on what the fund is looking to do. But as I say, South by is actually a great place to go for both of those things. So yeah, really important there. And if you've had your invite already, you should have access to the delegate list of who is attending South by Southwest. So you can look through there if you're not sure as well who is going, and all that kind of stuff. But that's a really, really important question. And then if you wish to apply to funds for the manager with little information about what that manager's done previously, if they've ever been to South by before, that's great. And put that in, talk about that they know what they're doing. And then a little action plan about what that manager is going to do. Again, can be really concise, doesn't need to be a big essay, just bullet point what you're looking to do. That's absolutely fine. And then we go on to the next section, which is I believe the budget. Yep. So we want to know if you're in receipt of any other funding. So whether that's, advances from labels, managers giving you money, publishing, or public funds, Arts Council, help musicians, all that sort of stuff. It can be funding that's not specific to this particular project you're asking for. So you got an advance to make an album, but that's not any money that you can put into going to South by. Still put it in here. This isn't to show that, oh, this person's had loads of money, they don't need our help. It's again to show that lots of other people are investing in you. You've got a lot of momentum behind you. You have a lot of support in the industry. It's a good way of showing all of that stuff. So I'd put as much as you can in here, really. It all helps, I think. And we're very aware that not all income that an artist receives can go on going to Texas. So it's not really going to go against you. And then we come to the budget. I will again pop in the chat if you're unsure about budgets a little. We have a video of how to complete our budget. But essentially all of the sections or the main sections that we would normally expect to see are here. And then there are a couple for additional if you want to add in some other specific things that are not listed. When you put in an amount for, say, marketing and promotion, let's say, you put in, I don't know, £2,000 maybe. You don't have to do that. It's just any number. We'd really want to see you break it down to say like 1,000 is for PR with X and 1,000 is for marketing with X. So splitting that down into each different thing. The more detail in this section, the budget, the better, actually. So these little detail boxes don't have a word count. You don't need to go crazy on them. But yeah, breaking it down like that really, really helps. Here you have international travel. Let us know exactly how much is going on flights, exactly how much is going on accommodation, exactly how much is going on taxis. All that stuff really helps. If there's nothing in here and they're just block numbers, there's not a lot to go on as to whether it's a good or bad amount of money. Obviously, we are a charity. We have limited funds ourselves. So we're not funding business class flights or 5-star hotels. You need to come with a decent kind of level of ask, really. And again, you can get hotels and accommodation through South by Southwest as a delegate too. So there is a level of what you should be asking for. Yeah, it's just good. The more detail, the better, I think, for this section, really. And then here in these little drop downs, you can say, like, yes, you were asking us to cover your artist band fees. And then if you find something that might be, so equipment costs is not something like we can fund really for live performances. So if you have some money in there because you think you need something, then you can just put no to show that, well, okay, they've put this in because they think they need it, but we're not paying for that, so that's fine. All that sort of stuff's really, really important. And so that's all the money you're spending, and you get your total here. And then you need to put in how much you're getting. Obviously, you're not getting any ticket sales. Your contributions from label management, any recording income, any royalties that you've had already from PPL or PRS, any donations, all that stuff. And this section, this total that you will get from here just needs to match this total here. So essentially, when you put in all of the income you've got, whatever is missing, that becomes the amount you're asking us for. So if you need to spend 10K to get there, you've only got 5K, then you need to ask us for 5K. And then you put that in the International Showcase Fund amount box. Then that should all equal 0. If it doesn't, you'll get this budget does not balance thing, and you just need to change the numbers until they do. But I'll send that video should be in the chat as well about how to fill out that budget. And then here's the section on the digital contingency, which I don't think is a priority at the moment. And I would hazard a guess that if you were to put it in, it's unlikely you would receive it. For South by Southwest, it would be more of a contingency plan, as in we'd sort something out after the fact at this point, I think. So you can just leave that. And then if you have any additional access requirements, so yeah, if you need any extra support, then that does not come out of your main budget. So this is just the cost of getting to doing the project, getting to the place. If you need more support for whatever reason, that comes from a separate access pot. So if you put yes there and then tell us what it is that you need, we can then have a phone call conversation, and then there'll be an X amount of money on top of the normal ask, so that nobody who has extra access needs is penalized through the main budget. But yeah, any questions about that, please email applications@prsfoundation.com. I'll come back to you. And then once you've done that, that is basically, well, that is all of the main application done. And then we have our monitoring section. This section is actually hidden from the assessors as well, as are some of those questions in the application earlier I was talking about, which is more for us. Some of those won't be visible to assessors either because it's not relevant to them. But anything in this form definitely isn't. So ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, again, that's about us monitoring who we are and aren't funding, but they don't see that, and it doesn't form any part of the assessment process. So you can choose prefer not to say for any question if you want to, but it really does help us understand where our money is and isn't going. So I would encourage you to fill that out, as it does help us out a lot. And it's very important to us. And then once you've done that, that's really it. So when you've completed this section, your submit button should appear on this page. So you can submit here, or you can click on this return to summary, and then the submit button should also appear around here somewhere. You can just hit submit and then done. So yeah, that is that. So yeah, I'm still gonna stick around for a while in the chat. If there are any more questions, we'll put up a little screen now and go through them all. Hopefully we can get lots done ahead of you submitting your applications. But as I say, if you do have any questions, you can always submit them through applications@prsfoundation.com before 23rd of December. And then we're back in the office from the 2nd of January. So anything over that period, I'll get back to you after then. Excellent. Thank you very much and good luck with your applications.